Nadim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So to start off, could you describe what is Qnovo and what specific problems are you solving for mobility customers?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on this program. So Qnovo is a software company. We develop a software layer that sits above the battery management systems in all battery operated systems, of course, EVs and mobility systems that are electrical in nature would utilize such kind of software. And fundamentally, when we looked at what battery management systems and software in particular can do, we're addressing a fundamental issue right now in the adoption of EVs globally. So Tesla, I think, is announcing their numbers today. Everyone is expecting them to blow out everything out of water. But the reality is EVs at this point still are for the affluent few of us in various geographies. And the question is, how do we accelerate the adoption of EVs globally from a sustainability standpoint, from a business standpoint? And we believe there are two issues at this point that really hamper this vast and aggressive adoption of EVs. First and foremost is what I'm going to call the driver experience. And by the way, when I talk EVs, I'm not necessarily limited to just passenger cars. We work from two-wheelers all the way up to Class 8, 18-wheelers. But for the purpose of this conversation, I think sort of four-wheelers, passengers would be a good place to start. But fundamentally, the driver experience is the first impediment. And by driver experience, I'm talking about folks are still used to the last 100 years to the ICE, to the combustion engine experience. And right now, they're dealing with range anxiety. They're dealing with, can I charge my car? Will it get me to the next charging station? And if I get to the next charging station, do I need to wait hours to let it charge? That's a fundamental issue that we at Qnovo are addressing. The second one is affordability. I alluded to that one in terms of the affluent societies. How do you put electric cars and mobility in general in underdeveloped nations, Africa, Southeast Asia, etc.? And that's another issue when it comes to cost and affordability. So let me spend some time initially on the driver experience. We believe that you got to address range anxiety. And the best way to address range anxiety is through the charging experience. ICEs have ranges of somewhere around 400 miles. EVs are not far behind that. And yet we do feel range anxiety in EVs. And that's because it takes a long time to charge the vehicle. And the charging infrastructure is not yet at the point where we feel comfortable with it. And so we're working on both of those fronts. Today, we routinely charge with our customers who are the vehicle makers, the vehicle in about roughly 20 minutes, half a tank in about 8-9 minutes. So if someone, say, lives in California and they're driving from San Francisco to LA, literally it's a very short pit stop in Harris Ranch or whatever the charging stations might be, similar to what one would do with a combustion engine gas refill. On the second point when it comes to driver experience is one of peace of mind. If you were an owner of a EV Kona, the Hyundai Kona, or the EV Bolt from GM, Chevy, your experience in the last couple of years was not pleasant. And so it's really important that one buys an EV, the battery health, the battery safety is not an issue of any kind in the back of their mind. So that's another aspect of what we believe the driver experience has to elevate itself to. Yeah, I'm going to buy a car. The battery will last me the warranty period, perhaps and more. And I'm not going to be stuck with a fire in my garage or perhaps anywhere else. Battery fires is a big issue. Today, we know that battery fires do occur. They're headline news, not only in the US and Europe, but also in Asia. They occur at a fairly rare occurrence, but roughly 10 parts per million, maybe 50 parts per million. But as the volume of cars increases, you're going to start seeing a lot more fires on the road. And that's another aspect where we participate. We reduce that by 100x, even 1000x, go down to parts per billion instead of parts per million. And then for those rare few that are left sort of, again, really now you're looking at parts per billion. How do you take those batteries out of circulation before they become a hazard, before they catch fire? So that's another attribute that we sort of bring to the driver experience. Affordability is another important one. We play very closely with the car makers and essentially open up the driving range and open up the supply chain. We believe that over the next 5 to 10 years, batteries will get commoditized, and that means the price and cost will drop precipitously, And we're part of that enablement of how do you get batteries to be interchangeable across different suppliers, and therefore give the OE and the battery vendors less leverage in their relationship, in the supply relationship. So today, we believe that when you bring the driver experience, the safety, and the affordability together, we will start seeing faster adoption in North America, where we're quite far behind. If you compare North America to, say, Europe, we're quite far behind, but also open up new markets in Southeast Asia, where you're looking at two-wheelers. How do you accelerate the adoption of two-wheelers? People don't realize if you take a scooter to a level 2 charger in Southeast Asia, you could charge that scooter in about roughly 15 minutes. And so you could avoid all the infrastructure that's required and currently is being put in place in some countries to do the swapping of batteries.
Could you describe one of the problems you mentioned as being related to safety? Could you describe what specific safety related problems are you solving, and how does your solution address things like thermal runaway, particularly from an advanced warning perspective? And are you better positioned for sort of advanced warning, preventative maintenance, or recall detection? Or are you also able to address sort of imminent safety critical thermal runaway events?
Actually, both. And so first, let me address there are 3 stages in the evolution of a battery's failure mode. First is a long duration of time where the battery's health begins to slowly degrade. And it may accelerate at some point in time. But that's where we intervene at the first level and sort of say, can we begin to mitigate the early signs of potential degradation? So it's like someone is not yet ill, but we see early signs of, or perhaps their blood panel is not really where it needs to be, and you begin to intervene with medication. That's exactly what we do. We do this all the time. We're measuring all the time. We're diagnosing all the time. And we intervene through what we call adaptive charging, and that essentially very slight modifications to the charging process, the currents, the voltage, to address and mitigate that potential health degradation. And that is covering perhaps a good portion of batteries, because no 2 batteries are born equal, and no 2 batteries would be used. Now you get to the second stage, and now the number is going to be much smaller. Batteries are degrading faster than we'd like them to be. And we've attempted every mitigation, and we're not being successful to the extent that we'd like to be happy. So now we give advanced warning, and that advanced warning could be many days, often many weeks. And that says, look, this battery, this car, this pack needs maintenance. So you're not stuck with a recall. You're identified uniquely what pack, what vehicle, what module needs to be brought in. And there's a certain degree of urgency. Some may have weeks advance notice to be brought in. Others may be more imminent, and you may have days perhaps to be brought in. Now, at the last stage, where somehow, again, we're not talking parts per billion, perhaps even parts per trillion, where we've attempted everything, we've tried the warning, we've tried advanced warning, we've tried maintenance, and still that car has not been brought in. We intervene to make sure that we're operating the battery in the utmost and the most safe way. That means reduction of the operating range, reduction of the charging procedures, such that you are limping home, and making sure that that car, that vehicle, is not be subject to fires. And ultimately, fires come about from most of the time from one major event, and that's sort of the evolution of lithium dendrite, metal dendrites. And we have a unique capability of identifying and measuring the evolution of those dendrites within the batteries fairly, again, days, weeks, and often more than weeks in advance.
Perfect. And beyond safety enhancements, could you talk about specific performance advantages that OEMs can gain from utilizing your platform? How do you extend the longevity of their battery systems? Do you contribute to the efficiency of their systems?
Absolutely. So today we offer 3 major performance attributes: fast charging, very, very fast charging, and the operative word, without degrading the battery. Everyone can sort of say, look, I'm going to put 300 kilowatts in my battery, and say, well, but we can't charge frequently. No, we can charge at 300 kilowatts without degrading the battery anytime, any temperature, and that's the uniqueness of that feature, and that's back to the point of range anxiety. The second one is range extension. Today, often car makers will include a buffer in the battery. So you may buy 100 kilowatt hours, but you use 85 85% of that. So that's 15 kilowatt hours at $100 per kilowatt hour. That's a lot of money thrown and weight. We help the OEMs reduce some of that. Conversely, you can also use that to reduce the size of the battery, and that means more cost savings and therefore more affordability. The warranty is very important because most passenger cars are perfectly fine with a 200,000 mile warranty, and we get them there. But it's really the commercial vehicles that are not satisfied with the 200,000 miles. We get those to what we call 1,000,000 kilometers, but we easily achieve that. So 600,000+ miles, buses, commercial vehicles, deliveries, vans, etc., heavy duty trucks. These are cars, individual vehicles that are going to be on the roads 24/7, not quite 24/7, but close, 360 days a year in fairly adverse conditions and temperatures, high temperatures, cold temperatures. And that's again where we intervene and really offer that longevity. Same methodology by using and understanding the health of the battery in a very great detailed way and looking at how each cell and each module is happening or perhaps degrading or aging. We can uniquely optimize its longevity and really target a certain application use or use case for the commercial vehicle, or more than just simply delivery trucks. Now we're seeing mining equipment, heavy duty, massive trucks that are being used in the mining of mines that are used for the making of EVs, copper mines, aluminum mines, lithium mines, etc. So everyone's saying we need to decarbonize, and therefore we need to sort of see that application across a very broad spectrum of vehicles.
Really interesting. Nadim, in the last minute or so, could you share your current fundraising plans and what you're hoping to achieve from participating in this event? Are you looking for partnerships, pilot programs, investments, other opportunities?
We always welcome the opportunity to really meet a lot of folks. This is a very broad and wide ecosystem. And fundamentally, raising a company is like raising a child. You need families, you need friends, you need partners, and that's kind of what we look for always in those kind of events and opportunities. And the ecosystem here, as I said, is broad. You look from different kinds of suppliers in the auto industry. We've announced a year and a half ago a very close partnership with BorgWarner, one of the big global tier ones. We also announced earlier this year additional activities and partnerships with NXP as a semiconductor provider. So all of those for us are important aspects of how do we broaden our horizons and broaden the relationships across the ecosystem. Our ambitions, and more than ambitions, actually, our track record now is to become a credible tier one supplier to the mobility partners in the software space, and we're well on our track to get there. But so obviously we need more. The more, the better. The more partners who can work with us, the more we can establish our credibility and our positions. But beyond EVs and mobility, we also have a great deal of activities and interest in stationary storage. Stationary storage, we see massive convergence between stationary storage and mobility, in particular as we see the charging infrastructure being developed. If you are a utility, you can't just simply drop a 20 megawatt line into a charging station. And so you have to put buffer, you got to put stationary storage. That's another area that we believe is of interest to us. Second life batteries is also something that is of interest to us, converging between EVs or mobility, generally speaking, with energy storage. And the last bit here, just looking at the audience that you're bringing together, we have a great deal of interest in the insurance sector. So you asked the question about longevity. So how do you now insure a car or a vehicle past its warranty period? We know how to do that in the combustion engine space. It is a whole new area when it comes to battery-operated vehicles, whether it's commercial or passenger cars. Would love to be engaging more with the insurance sector, whether the direct underwriting policies or the reinsurers.
Fantastic. Really interesting conversation. That concludes our Q&A with Qnovo. Nadim, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.